Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul, hopefully having an amazing day. We've got a lot of stuff to get through in today's video, including the PlayStation 5 Slim, which apparently has had images leaked of the chassis, but we're going to begin with AMD's Strix Point APUs. These will be the successor to Phoenix, albeit with a number of enhancements, including the fact that it's going to be RDNA 3.5 for the graphics IP, as well as sporting a hybrid design utilizing Zen 5 and Zen 5C. Now, there's a lot of stuff to get through with Strix Point, but let's begin with a couple of images that have been leaked by performance databases. Then I'm going to get into some of my own information from my own sources. Now, it's worth noting that both the CPU-Z as well as the HW info screenshots are blatantly not being 100% accurate with their detection. With this stuff, of course, it does require the software to be updated, and in this case, well, particularly CPU-Z is essentially just dying when it's trying to detect some of the nuanced aspects of the processor. For example, you can see that it's detected as one core, one thread. Now, it is possible that this is fake, but I think it's probably more likely to be real, but at the end of the day, who knows with these things. But we'll get more into the specifications in a moment, because as I said, some of this stuff is simply not being detected correctly anyway, and this is even perhaps more obvious when you look at the lower portion of the HW info image. For example, the clock frequencies, they seem a little off. They're a little bit hinky, and even things like the vid are probably incorrect as well. But let's now get into some of my own information. So, when it comes to Strix Point, there will be, of course, several models, not including Sarlacc. So Sarlacc will be ultra high-end. It's basically Strix Point, albeit with some differences. I will briefly give an update on Sarlacc in just a moment, but basically there are two Strix Point models, probably three actually, but I have information regarding 1 and 2. So Strix Point 1 is the higher-end variant, and it's going to be 4 plus 8, so that's 4 Zen 5 cores and 8 Zen 5C cores, which of course are the denser cores. The Zen 5 CCX is 16 megabytes L3, with the Zen 5C CCX being 8 megabytes, and both the 5C and 5 have 1 megabyte of L2 per core. Meanwhile, Strix Point 2, I think it's a 2 plus 8 config. I have heard some conflicting information with that, honestly, so don't take that 100%. I've heard some very conflicting information, including it's 2 plus 4, but I think that might be for the lower end variant still. So I think it's 2 plus 8, but I'm not as certain with that config. But either way, the cache configuration is supposedly 8 megabytes of L3 for the Zen 5 CCX, the same for the Zen 5C CCX, and again, the exact same amount of L2 cache per core, that's 1 megabyte. So these processors will be pretty impressive, honestly. I've heard that we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think it's 35 watts for Strix Point 1, whereas the lower end is more like 15 to 28. Obviously, this will be configurable based upon the, what it's being used for at that specific model and stuff like that. But I think these are going to be pretty impressive, honestly. Just to add, with Sarlacc, I've discussed Sarlacc a lot of times in the past, and I put out a video just quite recently, actually. I think around the end of July, so just over maybe a week and a half ago, something like that. And I was talking about the Halo product, which is Sarlacc, and I was hearing still some conflicting information concerning the specifications, but as far as I understand at this point, it does seem like it is 16 cores of Zen 5 with no Zen 5C. So it seems that my older video was right, and again you can see a nice comparison here with Strix Point and Sarlacc. So that was some older information as well. But now let's hop, skip and leap our way to the PS5 Slim. So a number of you actually messaged me about this. I think I must have had, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 DMs on Twitter minimum, and a couple of emails, plus tons of people tagging me. And obviously I want to thank everyone for this, and also people reaching out to me on Discord, which I'm actually really crappy at responding to. Sorry about that. But yeah, so there's an image that has popped up. Now, Andrew Marmo, hopefully I've pronounced that correctly. If not, I apologize. I'm pretty crappy when it comes to pronouncing people's names. He's the one that actually plonked it on Twitter, which started all of this. However, it was basically originating on a message board. And you can see that there is, well, an image of a PS5 Slim. Now, of course, the big question is this legit? Honestly, guys, I do not know. I have not seen an image of the PS5 Slim to even slightly say to you guys whether it's real. Now, for example, it could be a render. I mean, obviously, first of all, the image is just terrible quality. So that combined with the fact that it's at A, an acute angle, and B, there is not exactly a lot of the console showing here, makes it quite difficult to really ascertain the validity of the leak. But, you know, whether it's legit or not, at the end of the day, the PS5 Slim is not going to be a big upgrade as to what we currently have. It is essentially the same system again, albeit the difference, of course, is that it's going to be smaller. And apparently it's also going to not feature the drive baked in. It will, however, be upgradable, so you can basically add it onto the system, which is something that the PS5 diskless version did not allow. Yeah, I mean, the rumor is, of course, because we've seen some price cuts for the PlayStation 5 at the moment via Amazon, and I think the way that Amazon are listing the console as well also seems to indicate that there's a new one incoming. And look, just be honest, it's not exactly difficult. Like, you know, if the PS6 comes out, I'm going to give you guys a leak. There's going to be a PS6 Slim. Like, it's pretty obvious. This is just how these consoles are happening, right? It's standard. Like, the PS2 went to PS2 Slim. There's a PS3 Slim. There's a PS4. You know, how many models of the PS2, for example, were there? And that's not inclusive of all of the little internal revisions. Like, even the Xbox 360, if you actually look at the revisions of the Xbox 360 and Xbox One, but let's pick on the 360 for a moment, that thing, like, it literally had more revisions than I have, like, underwear. It is ridiculous. And they did things like they were obviously fixing some of the issues that were causing the red ring of death. Then they were doing other bits and bobs internally. And then eventually, I think they, was it the 360 or was it the PS3? Maybe both. I don't remember. This is off the top of my head. But they essentially put both the CPU and GPU basically onto the same package, I think. So, you know, they do this stuff to obviously cost reduce the production of the console. I don't believe the PlayStation 5 Slim has any differences in terms of the specification, i.e. the clock frequency, the number of compute units, the CPU, excuse me, is not, you know, having extra cores or anything like that. It is basically the same system. But whether this image is legit, I honestly do not know. What I will say to you guys is that the PS5 Pro is going to be a very interesting system, based on everything that I'm hearing. Hopefully the video will be up regarding that maybe tomorrow or the day after. I had to rewrite that script, like, I don't even know how many times at this point, because I kept on getting some updates last minute and I didn't want to publish, and then like 5 minutes later have to do an update video because that just kind of sucks balls. But yeah, bottom line is, I think this could be legit, but I certainly would not be surprised if it's fake, or it could be a rendering, which looks kind of similar. There was another dude in the comments that said that it looked like the video that he has, but as far as I understand it, he was literally wanting to sell the video to people. Tom Henderson as well, in the comments, said that he hasn't seen what the system looks like, the Slim, so I just wouldn't be that, you know, it doesn't really matter. It's not like a big deal. What is quite interesting, however, speaking of Tom Henderson, he also leaks, I'm just going to go into this really quickly, but he also detailed Project Chronos. So this is basically cloud streaming PlayStation 5 games. So obviously streaming is a really big deal at the moment. PS5 streaming beta is starting to roll out now to PlayStation users, well, some users. This will allow up to 4K streaming, which is actually really nice, at least in my personal opinion. Now, there isn't a huge amount here that is super interesting in terms of the details, but we have seen a number of PlayStation 5 kind of looking patents, as well as multi-GPU patents from Sony. And I kind of got the feelings, I even mentioned, I think I covered them several times, that they looked awfully cloud-like for me. Like, there were multiple GPUs and stuff like that, and there were, you know, multiple GPUs that were working on large CPUs. that to me was always a good sign that we were dealing with cloud-based things, because having multiple GPUs, you know, for a PS5 Pro, for example, doesn't make sense. And even if, hypothetically, it was to come out for the PS6, it's too early for those patents to start becoming public, at least in my personal opinion. So anyway, one of the big deals with this, allegedly, is that the SSDs, obviously, inside the PlayStation 5, I'm referring to the internal one, is really fast. And the problem with doing this in the cloud is, well, accessing data on networks is already kind of a pain in the ass. When you're dealing with multiple users needing to pull data from multiple SSDs across multiple data centers, it becomes a lot trickier. And that is putting it extremely mildly. So there is basically a custom storage solution, which is known as Cura. And this is basically all custom designed by Sony, just so that they can essentially deal with the data that is required for PS5 games. It's going to be really interesting if we ever get a look inside the data center, just to see how it differs. I mean, it would be really cool for Sony to outline it. I don't think we're ever going to get, like, a tour around their data center. It would be pretty awesome if they did, but I'm not exactly counting my chickens on that. But it's going to be very cool. I mean, I think, personally speaking, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Cloud streaming is cool, but it's not, like, I personally like just putting a disc in a PS5 or whatever. I just like having the system at home. That's just my personal preference. I have tried things like, of course, you know, Microsoft and Sony streaming, and I've also used GeForce Now quite a bit from Nvidia, and it's pretty cool. Like, you know, genuinely speaking, it is really cool. And the cloud streaming on the GeForce Now, for example, is really good if you have like a low-end laptop or whatever, or you're traveling and you want to be able to play games, and, you know, you sign into your Steam account, just for example. It's really good. However, personally, I am still a big fan of actually having access to the hardware locally, and again, that's just my personal opinion. With that said, hopefully you have enjoyed the video. If you did, you know what to do. Leave a like and all of that stuff, and I'll see you soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.